welcome to the fourth session of our Golang Discord bot workshop. Today we'll be covering how to make mini games from user input.
Okay, so since we're going to be making mini games that take user input, some of these inputs aren't going to be commands. And in order to take input that isn't commands, you're going to need to update your mux file. So first, you're going to want to make a new string variable. Let's call it message MSG. Right. So then in your function on message create function, you're gonna reset at the start of the handler function. And from there, if the context isn't directed, or like as in the user didn't run a command and didn't use a prefix and such, then update the empty variable. Then from there, just create a helper global function so that the command files can access the updated message. This is going to be a get user message function that's going to return a new message. Oh, if while message is empty, it's going to continue, and at the end of that for loop, it's going to return message. And that's going to be your updated mux file.
Any questions? Are we all good? Good.
Okay, so our first mini game we're gonna make is actually a higher or lower number guessing game. And first we're gonna make a new file, right? And then inside the file we're gonna have our package, which is mux. Okay, and then we're gonna import our math/ran. Okay, you don't have to worry about the imports right now, so we're gonna get started on the function. And then for the mux high-low function, we're gonna pass in the session, the Discord message, and the context, which is actually just like a type in our mux file, which contains additional information. And then we're gonna first generate the number, the random number, from 1 to 100.
If you're just like joining in, I'm gonna post all of the code in the server in a Google Doc in case you miss anything. So
the only thing we've like really completed so far is just the updated mux file in order for us to take like user input that isn't specifically commands. So if you're going to need like a command to call the mini game, then input that isn't commands to like actually play the game.
That would be like this stuff. So we made a variable here, message, we reset it, we went, is it not directed, then update it, right? And then we made a helper function to return it. That's all. And now we made a new file called hilo.go. And this is we're going to program our first game called, or like a guessing game. And so far we just made a new random number generated from 0 to 100. Oh, the reason this is 101, by the way, is because it generates it from 0, less than or equal to n, less than whatever value you put in. It's non-exclusive to the number you put in here. So if we want 100, we have to do like 101.
Okay, then we're gonna send a message using our bot using the function channel message send. gonna tell the user to like guess a number. Okay, now we're gonna first like before we actually like start guessing, we're gonna create our helper function that actually gets the guesses from the user. So we're gonna create a function called getGuess. And then getGuess will pass in the session and Discord message. Okay, and then basically in this function, we're gonna like use the function like a to I to convert a string, because since like the user types it in, it's a string, and then it can actually like know it's a number. We're gonna have to convert it into an integer, and then we're gonna store it into an integer and actually an error variable.
So as you can see, this is underlined because we haven't imported the string convert package, right? So if you quickly hit Control S to save your file, it should automatically import that in right here. And this function, by the way, is just a helper function we made in the mux file to grab the message that isn't a command.
Okay, then afterwards we're gonna use a for loop. And in this for loop, we're basically just checking if the error variable is like nil, which means it's fine. And then if it's invalid, which is like it gives us error, we're gonna keep forcing the user to keep guessing. We're gonna tell the user first like that it's invalid. And then basically we're gonna use the guess again. No, wait. We're gonna use the API function again to make the user convert the string to integer again. And basically, if the import works, then it'll escape the for loop and then return the actual number. And then we can use this number back in our main function. Okay, and now we're gonna actually have another for loop. And basically in this for loop, it checks if the number is actually equal to the answer. And then we're gonna have two if statements checking if it's bigger or higher or lower. And in each of these if statements, we're gonna have a channel message send to tell the user which if it's lower or higher. And we want the user to keep guessing if it's not equal to the answer, right? So we're gonna use our helper function, which gets the input from the user. And then this for loop will basically just constantly check if the input from the user equals to the answer. And after it escapes the for loop, we're gonna tell the correct answer to the user using channel message send again. And we're gonna use the I to A function to convert the integer to a string in order to actually print it out. Basically, yeah, right. Do you guys have any questions on how the game actually works?
Was it get this built-in function?
It's a helper function we created to get the get.
We have it defined, or where is it?
Oh,
The helper function is like right below.
Here.
Screen.
And one key thing to note is that we have it starting with a lowercase, right? As you can see, it's lowercase get, but then our actual function is uppercase. The reason for that is this is a Golang thing known as like global and local functions. So uppercase means global, which means that which we're gonna do right now, in our main function, we're gonna access it and call it, right? If the user does a command, but we don't want them to have like access to the helper function. So we make it local so that only this file can use it. And speaking of the global function, we're going to quickly go ahead to our main.go. If you guys don't need this code, it's on the notes doc that I put in the Discord server. So for now, I'm just going to move on a little bit. We're going to go over here to last time we made the routers. If you don't have this code either, it also should be in the server. If you can't find it, just like send me a DM. I'll help you out with that. So we're just going to go ahead and add in our new function that we just made. So the first parameter is the command, right? We're going to call it high-low. You can call it whatever you want. And then a little description. So high-low guessing command, right? And then this is the part where the router is a mux object, right? And we have that global function defined in the mux package. And because it's global, we can call it right here. And as it pulls up in there. If I try to call the helper function, it comes, but it's not going to work. It's going to give you an error because it's local. So we call the global one. Now that should be it. What is this? Unclear name. Oh, if you're getting this sort of error, it's probably because you don't. It's probably because it wants the access to the mux object. So we're gonna go ahead and add that into. Yeah. I'm not too sure why that's happening. It is. Oh, maybe because I didn't save it. That's probably why. Yeah, that was why. I just didn't save it. Yeah, we don't need this. It should be fine now. I just forgot to save my mux file, but yeah. So once you have this function done here, we have it uppercase. Make sure your helper function over here is uppercase, so it's global. And then in your high-low function, you can just call it directly like this because it inherits from the mux package. Right. And once you have this finished, you can go ahead and save your bot, right? By doing go run main.go. And now if we go to our Discord server, we can test this command, because we can test it and make sure it works. I'm just gonna pull it up real fast so I can demonstrate. So I'm gonna go ahead to this one. And as you can see, I probably just didn't save it. Try again. There we go. So now it gives you a number, and I can get something. It'll say too high, it's a little lower. Too low, gets a little higher. Too high, get something in the middle-ish. Too high, 20,000 maybe. Oh, that's not a number, right? Guess again. And too low, 28. Too low, 29. And now we have a number. If you try to guess after that, nothing's gonna happen because the game is finished.
Just one question.
Yes.
The get user message is declared function by you, or is
Yes, we have it declared over here. Go to our mux. Oh, it's on here. This one.
Oh,
To make sure it's uppercase. Oh, if you don't have any of like this code, which is this stuff, you should be able to go to the Google Doc in the Discord server. It should be there. It's called like session 4 note or something.
okay.
It should be at the very top. Just copy paste the line from there. Because I think it's like 4 steps for this part. Okay, and once you guys finish testing this game, we have one more game that we're going to make. We're going to make tic-tac-toe as well. All right. We'll just start with that now. So as we did the first game, we make a new file. We'll call this one tic-tac-toe.go, right? And then it's gonna copy the thing. Rename that to tic-tac-toe. We don't need time here. And we don't need this. Okay. So you have a new fresh file here called tic-tac-toe. We're going to be making this game. So the first thing you want to do is, so in a tic-tac-toe game, right? You have 9 tiles, right? Technically they're tiles. You have like, this, this, this. Anyone know how we can like represent this in code? A what? Yeah, like a 2D array, right? So very similar to Python style, we're going to create a grid. It's 3x3, right? Because that's the tic-tac-toe board. It'll store strings, like X and O. And yeah, so it should be like this. So the first one is the size of your outer array. The second one is the size of your inside arrays. This is a type. And then you're going to have empty brackets. Technically, you could fill stuff in here, but leave it empty for now because you're just declaring it. And inside the actual function over here, we're going to set our values to a default So for this example, I'm gonna just use underscores or dashes. I'm gonna use dashes. You can use whatever you want as a placeholder, whatever you feel works in terms of formatting. So I'm gonna use dashes. So that going, comma. After you declare the 2D array for your grid, we're also going to store a variable called tile left. So what this variable is going to store is straightforward, the number of tiles that are still default values, right? So do you guys know why we're having this variable? What could we possibly use tiles left for in a tic-tac-toe game? Why would we want to know how many tiles are left?
If there's 0 tiles, the game ends.
Right, that's like a tie, right? The game tied. So that's what we're going to use that for. And technically, you could just output the board as like text, but I think last week we learned another method of message sending in Discord bots to make it a little more formatted. Do you guys remember what that is? How else can we send a message in Discord bots that looks a little bit more better and embed, right? So we're just gonna create an embed to store our game board so that we can send it. I'm gonna call it game embed. So the type is a reference. Make sure you have the ampersand and then discord.message embed brackets. The title, I just put tic-tac-toe. The color, if you remember how to do the color, it's you find your color hex code, convert it to int, and you use that. So it doesn't really matter what color you use, just pick one. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually go down here and we're going to make a helper function to print our game, because every time the player makes a move, we want to show the updated board, right? So that's what this is for. Okay, the parameters you're going to have here are your Discord session, Discord go dot session, your Discord message, Discord go dot message, and the game board, which is a embed type. So Discord go dot message embed. Okay, and then the first thing we want to do is reset our embed's description. So that is empty, like that. And now, how would you go about putting our 2D array into our description?
Nested.
Right. Actually, you don't have to do a nested for loop. All you really have to do is loop through. This is how you're going to do, what is it? Item loop, right? Indexing, right? You have a range. And then what you're going to loop through is the grid. If you do, oh, I spoke grid. Grid. Okay. So these two variables, the first one is the index of your values. That's like 0, 1, 2, 3, the index of it, right? The second one holds the actual value. In this case, because we're just printing it, we don't really care about the index. We just want the value. So the first one is underscore, and the second one is row, because the outer which will hold the rows. And now the reason you don't need a nested for loop is that once you get the row value, all you have to do is add it to your description the join of the values in there, right? So to access that, you just get the entire row. So you have to splice it, but you don't have a starting index and you don't have the ending one. So default, it just takes the whole thing. And then we're going to separate it on the space, or we're going to separate it with the space. So it's not just bundled together. And then at the very end, because this is going through every row, right? We want it to look like this and not one straight line. So we're gonna add a new line character at the end of it, so it enters in. And once we finish that, that's basically it. We just have to send it now. So channel message send that channel ID, and then the actual embed. And that's it for the print game function. I believe the next thing we need is the game one function. So this is how we're going to check if the user, or if the user or the computer won the game. So to do that, we're going to take a string of val. So this could be like X, O, right? Depending on who you're trying to check won the game. And this is going to be a Boolean function. So we'll have a return a bool. Now, how would you guys go about checking who won based on the string?
Either cases, all rows the same, or all what you call the
Column. Yeah.
column is the same, or there's a diagonal.
Right. So there's basically three conditions: either it's a row, a column, or diagonal. So the way we're going to check that, we're going to first check I believe, the rows. Yeah. So we're going to have a for loop, set that to 0, and then have a loop 3 times, increment it. And now in here, we're just going to check if the grid at that row and the first part of it is equal to the value, and the grid at that row, but the second part is also equal to the value, and the grid at that row, the final part is also equal to the value. Then that means that the row is all the same. So whoever we're checking, they won the game. This is how you're going to check the rows. Does this make sense? And now we're going to copy this basically for the columns. This is the second condition. So I'm just going to change the variable to j because it makes more sense. And then you're going to have to swap these around. So the j will be the second part because we're checking columns. But the concept is the same. Right. So that's the rows and columns. Do you guys know how you would check the diagonal? So this is rows, columns. How would you check diagonal?
Check 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. Oh, isn't there like other diagonals?
There is 2 diagonals. Yes, correct. So
1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1.
technically, because there's only 2 cases, you can check it however you want. But the way I'm going to do it is both diagonals, they intersect at the middle part, right? So if the middle part is not the variable, there's no point in checking diagonals. So we're going to first check that one. And that's located at 1, 1. So if that one is equal to value, then there's a chance that we have a diagonal. So we're just going to check both of them. We'll check the first one, which will check the top left corner is equal to val. And the bottom right corner is also equal to value. Then we have a diagonal. And then the second case would be if the grid on the top right corner is equal to val, and the grid at the bottom left corner is equal to val. Return true. If none of these cases are true, we'll just for default return false. And that's it for the game one checking helper function. we can now get on to moving on to making the actual game logic inside here. So does anyone have any questions on the two helper functions we just made? No? All right. So this game is going to have 3 base cases. That if any of these base cases are true, we want to stop the game, right? Do you guys know what those base cases are?
When time clock is 0,
That's one of them. That means that we tied. What are the other 2 the base cases?
if game 1 returns the true.
That's one of them. That's if the user won. And the second one would be if the computer won.
Oh.
So because the user is X, well, okay, the user in normal tic-tac-toe can be either X or O, and you can probably easily implement a way to like set a user variable, user value equal to X, and have that be like an input, like what do you want to be, X or O? For now, though, for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna have a default user is X and computer is O. So we're just gonna check while the user has not won the game, we're gonna keep going. The first thing we're gonna do is print out the game. OBDS, DM, game, embed. This is how you print the game. We already have that function down here. The next thing we want to do is give out some sort of message to ask for input. We're going to say channel message send dm.channel ID. And then here we're going to say you are X. Now you can see this sort of giving us an error here because we're using double quotes inside. There's a very easy way to get around that. Just do backslashes. And then we'll do a new line here and say your move. You don't have to copy what I'm putting here, by the way. You can customize it however you want to grab user input. I'm just going to say type it as row column. And then I'll be nice and give an example like that. And that is it. And now, how would we get the whatever the user responds with? Do you guys remember?
Yeah, user get user
Message. We're the helper function we made in Mux, right? Yeah. So just do user move string equal get user message. It came right there.
really sorry, but can you show me the code real quick because there's no any of the
Or-
shows the user message.
It should
Get
be
user
there.
message.
It should be there. Click the link.
Mhm.
It should be at the top. Oh, is that session 3?
Yes, I can do it. Where did you have session 4?
No, yeah, session 4.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay. Cool. So after we get the user message, we're going. The user message is going to return a string, right? If you hover above this, you can see it returns string. But we're asking for a row and column, which are integers, and they're 2 separate values. So the first thing we're going to do to parse it, we're going to say user move is equal to strings, split user move str, and we're going to split it on the space. And this will give us an array of whatever the user said. Now we're going to implement some error checking here because we want to make sure that the user input is valid. So the first thing we're going to do is check the length of this array. We're going to say length of user move is equal to exactly 2. We don't want less than 2 or bigger than 2. We want exactly a row and a column, 2 values. So if that's the case, we'll move on with the game. But if that's not the case, we'll add in a error check and just tell them kindly that they gave us insufficient amounts of arguments and that we're going to return. So I'll go ahead and put that here. So I just said wrong number of arguments, game canceled, and return. So the game will just end. And if you want to play again, you have to redo the command. But if you have the correct number of arguments, we're going to go ahead and use the strconvert package from the high-low game to convert our values into actual integers so that we can use them. So we're going to take str.con a to I and put in their user move. We want the row, so that's the first value, yes. And then the same thing for the column. str.con a to I. User move for a column, we want the second value, so that's going to be 1. And now we're going to implement another error check, which is this one's going to check if the user actually gave us numbers or if they gave us something that's not a number. The way we check that is we just check the errors. So if either one of these are not null, then they didn't give us a proper number. So we'll let them know. Channel message send DM channel ID. Only numbers accepted. Game. Yeah. To cancel the game, we just return. But if that's not the case, then they give us actual numbers. We'll continue and go ahead with the game and say, what this is the last error check we're going to do. We're going to check if the values are actually within bound. So the tic-tac-toe board is 3 by 3. So if it's less than 0, or if it's bigger than 2, or if the column is less than 0, or the column is bigger than 2, if any of those are true, then some of the number, 1 or all of them, are out of bound, and we'll just alert them about that too. If we don't do these error checks, the game will not work because you'll get like out of bound errors, right? So to prevent that, we're just adding these error checks. Okay. So that was the last error check, and if all of those passed, then they gave us valid values. So we'll go ahead and update the grid to reflect that. We'll say row, column. So this is how you index the array. And to update it, we'll just set to X. And there's one more thing we have to do. We have to also update the number of tiles left, right? Because we just used 1, so we'll subtract 1. And that's it for the user part. The next part is going to be the computer response. There's many ways you can do this. You can implement some sort of algorithm to check the user tile, right? And try to come up with a strategic move. But to keep the simplicity, I'm going to just create a very simple random generation. And this uses the same concepts from our high-low game as well. So the first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to check if tiles left is bigger than 0. Because if it's not bigger than 0, then the user put in the last tile, there's no point in generating a computer one if there's no tiles left. So we'll check that, and then we'll generate a computer move. It'll be an int array because row column is int, and inside of that int array, we're going to have ran.intn, yes. And there's 3 possibilities of numbers, 0, 1, or 2. So I'll put 3 in there. There's 3 values. That's the same case for the column, so we'll also put that there. And that's technically it for the computer random generation. However, we can't just use this move because there's a chance that the computer randomly generated the move that a user also did, and you don't want overlap. So to check for that, we're we're going to say that for grid computer move 0 and computer move 1 equals to x. So while if the move we made is an x, that means the user already made it. So while that's true, remember Golang doesn't have while loops, they only have for loops. So this is like your while loop quotation marks. So while that's true, we're going to regenerate it. So you can just copy this code. But when you copy it, you have to remove the semicolon because you're not declaring it, you're setting it now. If you leave that in there, you're going to get an error because you can't redeclare. So just have it set. And this will keep running until it finds the value that isn't x. And you already know that for sure this is going to work fine because you're checking tiles left is bigger than 0. If tiles left bigger than 0 is true, then there's at least one tile that's not x, so it'll work fine. And once you find that, then you're going to want to update the grid. Let's copy that over. And set that to, in this case, we're using X for user, so we'll use O for the computer. And then once again, update the tiles left because we just use another one. And after all of that is done, that's basically the end of the game. The last thing we need to do, we're still missing 2 base cases. Up here, we check the base case if the user wins, right? If the user wins, we exit the loop and we just immediately go down here. We'll add some sort of like winning statement. But we also have to check if they tied. So if they tied, that's why we have the tiles left. We'll just say if it's 0, or to be safe, we'll say if it's less than or equal to 0. We'll print game one more time. If you have any questions, let me know.
Is that if outside, like, I think it's that it is changing the branch and outside. Yep.
For which part?
If you're like, never mind. Sorry, it's not.
Oh, you're asking about this one? Yeah, this is for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we're inside of that. So if we tied, we're going to print out the updated board one last time, and we will let them know that they tied. So like game tied. And the game is ended, the game is returned. And that's it for the base case of tying. Does this make sense? Yeah, so the tiles left is not positive, then all the tiles are used, which means it tied. So just end the game. Now we're gonna check one more thing, the last base case, which is if the computer won. So instead of X, we're gonna use O. So if our helper function using O finds a match here, that means the computer won. So we'll again print the board out and let them know that they lost. You lost. And then just end the game too. Now the very last thing we need is this for loop here. We're checking if the user, while the user hasn't won, run the game. But if they win, we want to let them know that they won before just abruptly ending. So we'll print the game out. This is outside of the for loop. So if this breaks, we'll go ahead and print out the game. And let them know that they won. You win. You don't need to return over here because the function already ends. This is a function ending. So once it does that, it'll already return because it's a void return, right? So that's marks the end of this. There's an error somewhere. Oh, I use a comma here. Let's use a semicolon. Minor mistakes. Fix that over here too. Is there another error? This is supposed to be uppercase. And that's the end of it. Okay, cool. Now the code is good. If you want the code you weren't able to follow, the code is on the notes in the Discord server. The last thing we have to do is once again this. We're just gonna change it to or you can name it whatever you want to name it. And then give tag. And then because it's a global function, call it right here. And that marks the end of that. You can now run it. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna try that real fast. Tic-tac-toe. As you can see, it gives an embed for tic-tac-toe, and it tells me that I'm X, and that I have to input my move as row column. So I'm gonna try to go for the center. So that'll be 1, 1, and I put my X right in the middle. The computer randomly put it in the bottom right corner. So I'm gonna put it on the top right corner. I'll say 0, 2. And I think I just need to put it on 2, 0. And I win. I get the diagonal. Now, because the computer algorithm here is just random, it's kind of hard for the computer to win. I'm going to try to lose on purpose. 0, 0. Okay. We'll try 1, 0. Okay, 0, 1. And then 1, 2. Oh yeah, so now the computer randomly won and it gives me the you lost message. I will now attempt to tie tic-tac-toe 0, 0. 1, 0. 2, 2. 1. Oh, I actually only won. Whoops. Okay, wait. It'll probably say that you tied. All right, that's it for the tic-tac-toe game. That also concludes the end of our session. If you guys have any questions, you can always let me know. And the resources should be in the server. That should be the end. And just real quick, I want to let you know that for our next session, we're going to be covering this part, which is it uses OpenAI's API to access ChatGPT. We're going to implement ChatGPT into our predictor bot for fun. What? I think I already have the code on there, so I'm going to quickly run it to show you guys a preview. Okay.
Yeah, I think this like seems to inspire.
Okay, if I say GPT, now I can say something. 2 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1. Oh, okay. I guess it's not possible. I don't know how to spell. How do you spell this?
Quant UM.
What?
PU.
TUM. Wow, it's taking a while to explain this. Oh, there it is. All right, so yeah, we'll be doing this next session. But that concludes the end of this one. So see you guys next week.
Is that everything working for you? Or no, it's not working.